Hey, what is up, you guys? It is Kat, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a truly exceptional guest with us today on the podcast, Mr. Ken McKnight. Ken is a seasoned IT professional who currently serves as the Vice President of Information Technology at Peace Hills Insurance here in Alberta. With over 3 years of experience in this role, he has been instrumental in driving the current digital transformation that they're going through within the organization. Prior to his role at Peace Hills, Ken held the position of VP Digital Transformation at Cashco Financial, where he played a pivotal role in shaping the company's digital strategies and customer-facing programs. But Ken's experience and expertise goes beyond these roles. As senior manager at Deloitte, he has provided invaluable insights and advice to clients on various aspects ranging from business expansion to technology implementation, and he has led initiatives in brand development, in customer experience, program development, software, hardware implementation, and much, much more. Needless to say, Ken has a deep passion for technology transformation. His contributions and strategic thinking have consistently delivered superior results with all of the organizations that he has led. Welcome, Mr. Ken McKnight. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to have you do my intros for all my meetings. It's great.
All of the meetings.
That's right.
Enter
Every meeting
Ken.
will start with an intro from Cat Lamb.
Exactly. So I shared with you just before we came on air, I shared with you that our audience are mostly, now I can't say for sure because we haven't done, we don't have like a submission form and application form for all of our listeners, but our audience we try to appeal to people who are in IT and in accounting and in business consulting with a perspective of digital transformation or playing an instrumental role in that organization, much like yourself, right? And so I guess I'd love to start the conversation off by what motivated you to pursue a career in this field and eventually, obviously become a VP of information tech.
Absolutely. I grew up in a family of small business owners. And when I went to university, I was looking for something where I could do in business, but I still love technology. And my career started with a university degree in healthcare informatics, which is really about merging healthcare and IT together. And there's a program at University of Victoria that's focused on that. So I kind of discovered that where it was the business of making technology enable healthcare to be more efficient. So I found that to be really interesting. It was kind of really interesting. It's really focused on the kind of what BA work is now, which is that you have deep technologists and you have deep business people. You have to bridge the gap between them, and then we found that that was a lot of fun. So that's kind of where I started, and then I spent many years in healthcare out of school, and then decided I wanted to bridge out into other things other than healthcare, and started to move into working at Deloitte doing consulting. So I did that for a number of years and had a chance to do business cases, strategies, implementation projects, all that fun stuff before deciding to bridge out into the private sector and became my first VP role of digital transformation there at Cashco, and then this role a few years later. So
nice. That is amazing. And often it's the secret is not necessarily in the advancement of tech, but bridging, as you say, bridging the gap between technology and humans.
100%, yeah. And you think about one of the things I always think about is the fact that a lot of boards right now are looking for people to have technology skills because every single company is dependent on technology now. There is nothing you can do. If your technology system go down, the entire business down. No one's reverting to paper without severe interruptions. And so technology is just a fundamental enabler and force multiplier for the entire business. So a successful implementation of technology is critical.
100%, and so critical in the scaling of business. We go from perhaps even like a mom and pop shop to I know one of the previous companies that I had helped, they had quickly gone from a mom and pop shop to growing across Western Canada, and then they suddenly became even publicly traded on the TSX, and yet their systems had not caught up to that point, hence the whole entire journey of digital transformation. Amazing. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say
That's
that
okay.
I was going to say that digital is so interesting as well, depending on where you are in the journey, right? So, and there's always that lag lead. So, the companies that are ahead of the game will be ahead of the game for a few years, and then those companies that are behind the game will inherently start a digital transformation project and then leapfrog those other companies. And so it's one of the things I love about it is that it's never done. There's always,
Yes.
You'll have a lag for a few years, and then suddenly you have to do something again big to catch up. So it's there's always change happening.
Right, 100%, 100%. So one of the barriers that often we face or organizations face is, the cost of going to that digital transformation and trying to balance that with return on investment, because obviously, the digital transformation should be able to support the business, right, in their efforts to scale and garner more revenue. So how do you feel about that?
It's an interesting one. The key thing is you want to avoid being considered just a pure cost center, right? So you really need to address what you're doing as key enablers. And there are, cost centers, but it's really about how you frame, a problem. So if you look at cybersecurity, there's lots of money being spent on cybersecurity, and that could be considered a key cost center or just a pure cost center. But really, it's about, framing that investment in terms of this is about enabling our business to survive what is an inevitable thing. It will get eventually breached, and having systems in place to isolate, secure, and get back to operating. So that's one example,
100%.
and that's one where everybody's finding their costs with cybersecurity are increasing every year, and that's just a good way of justifying. And same with any other technology. So even just rolling out, we were a little bit behind on rolling out laptops when I came in. And so we rolled out laptops, and, that was to enable our staff to more effectively work remotely. We're doing a fairly large transformation right now that's about revamping our entire way of doing business and taking ourselves from an on-prem system to a brand new cloud-based system, and making sure that we're on the latest and greatest technology. And then you get that implemented, and inherently, because you're on a software as a service platform, you're going to have continual regular updates that you need to stay on top of as well to make sure you're leveraging value from your investment.
Yeah, for sure. What are some metrics that you would entertain when trying to, like, when justifying that the investment that you've put into your digital transformation is in fact, helping you grow and helping you scale?
It's a $1 million question. What are the metrics you use to justify a major investment? And sometimes the investments are based on technology obsolescence, where you have to get off a burning platform. Those ones are easier to justify than anything else, versus getting to a point where you're looking for efficiencies with staffing or efficiencies of the way you deliver services, right? And it's about, I always look at it as efficiencies with staffing is about saying, okay, we have a current staff load, we are growing. And how do we use this technology to improve? Are we going to see a 10% improvement in throughput? And so it really depends on the project you're looking at. So I don't have any specifically good metrics, but you can get down to those time studies where you're actually looking at how long does it take to complete a process, right?
Yeah.
Another one to look at is really, are you keeping up with your peers in the market? So if your peers are offering services, then and your customers are demanding those services, you got to inherently keep up with them. So that's an easy one to justify as well. But I like to look at it in terms of some of the efficiencies as well. So where are you actually going to get efficiencies in your day-to-day processes that will allow you to either spend more time with customers or to grow and not require this rapid addition of staff?
100%. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I dare say that the part of the scaling of businesses is not only the productivity and the efficiency of delivering that service, but enhancing the quality of that service as well, and the breadth, to your point, the breadth of your products that you can offer as well.
Yeah, right? I worked with an organization once where the digital strategy is really about looking at what their peers in the market were doing and say, okay, so here's 20 things that your peers are consistently doing and that you're not doing. And so inherently, it's like you want to keep up with that market. I mean, that's chat bots or being able to
Yep.
download your policies or whatever, not policies, but whatever your product is online or even having a portal. If we don't have these features, we're just not keeping up with what the market's looking for. And eventually consumers are familiar and aware, and they will want those products. So.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in for like current generations, we're all very mobile friendly, right?
Yep.
And so to have something, to not even be able to access via mobile, I think that's something that we have to, sort of keep on top of, if you will.
I think one of the things
Yeah.
that I found really interesting in my career has been that I've always loved digital experiences. I've always loved getting things mobile and electronic and not on paper. And for the last 15 years of my career, I've always, fought against this thing where it's like, yeah, but we do have customer bases that still want it. And it still comes up to this day where there's customers that do not like digital, and they are part of the aging population, but they still
Mhm.
are a portion of the population that we're serving and an important part of the customer base. And so you still have to consider what happens when we don't have this feature or that feature, right? And
That's
so
right.
it's I'm intrigued to see when in my career that stops when people are like, okay, we do not need paper-based forms, or we do not need something that can be mailed out to people, right? So
Yep.
I'm very intrigued to see when that actually happens and that stops being part of the general conversation.
I feel like that might come sooner than
I
we
think we're
think.
close, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not
Because
100% there yet.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I only say that because even in the banking industry, I no longer get paper bank like contracts even,
Yeah.
right? They're all delivered electronically or via a portal that you have access to. And so yeah, so that's interesting. That's interesting. So question for you. Um, what are the some of the key initiatives or projects that have been crucial to this journey of digital transformation that you guys are currently on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole bunch of I look at it in terms of a lot of what we're focusing on is on staff skill updating, right?
Mm,
So our current environment has been an on-premise environment with custom coding. And so when we're implementing this new system we're implementing, which is a software as a service system, it obviously brings new skills that we have to educate the staff on. We even with implementing like going from on-prem, we're starting to implement more of our new stuff into uh, a pure cloud environment and making sure that we're architecting things using those features. So upskilling in architecture, upskilling in business analysis, upskilling in our development teams as well. Those are all the pieces that we're looking at. And that kind of speaks to the people side of things. So making sure that you take your current team along with you and making sure that your team has the skills that are necessary to have continuous education. And then in terms of broader projects, we've done a fair amount of work on moving ourselves to Microsoft 365 environments and enabling collaboration tools, enabling the hybrid workforce to have laptops that work at home seamlessly and in the office seamlessly, enabling those hybrid meetings, all that fun stuff, the stuff that everybody's been working on.
mhm.
And then like in terms of our broader core system, like we are doing a very significant core system upgrade right now. And so that will impact the entire company. And that's just really helping them understand the change management component of that. How did you do
Change
your job
management.
previously and how are you doing it in the future? And that's an incredibly important part of these projects. And something that's very easily overlooked and very easily
Yes.
understood. So
Yes, 100%. Organizational change management is so significant, especially for digital transformation, right?
100%.
That's
And
yes.
it's one of those things that's so hard to, you have to do it, right? And so like I was looking at rolling out Bing Enterprise Chat,
Mm,
which is the new
AI.
ChatGPT
Yeah.
secure version of Microsoft 365, and just finding the time to write up some documentation, write up some policies and procedures around it in light of everything else, and staying up with, hey, this is a feature that's enabled
Yep.
in by default, and you have to disable it, and just staying on top of saying, we know you need to do this, but let's actually uh, get the time and put the effort into having the communication, having the training, having the education.
Yeah, for sure. So like that's exciting. Bing, the chat GPT. How would you foresee it applying to your employee family?
That's another question. We haven't figured that out. We just know that
Mm,
in the market, you can currently go and you can use these tools, right? And so we
mm,
say, okay, we want to give someone the ability to leverage these tools and figure out how to use them responsibly
mm,
without having it in an insecure way. And so that's what we're working with the business now and saying, okay, is this something we want to look at? Is it,
mm-hmm.
do we think there's a problem we have to secure it? And how do we deploy this? So, and
Yeah.
even the initial piece, right? Like, that's not even talking about the Microsoft 365 Copilot tools that are coming out. So, which I
Tell me
think,
about that. I actually don't know much about the Copilot tools.
yeah, so Copilot is the Microsoft's embedding, their component of embedding AI into everything they're doing.
Oh,
And so that's, from I think if you look at, there's a great video that talks about it from Microsoft Word or Office 365 perspective, where they will record a meeting and transcribe it live and summarize it. So you can join a meeting late like this one, and you can click
yep.
a button and it will just summarize the key points we talked about. And so someone can then, instead of
Amazing.
reading the transcript, they just read the summary.
Yeah,
And then there was
that's amazing.
it's truly spectacular, but it's very interesting to see. It's very expensive, so it'll be interesting to see how the uptake is. But if you watch that video, they take that meeting where you talk about a strategy, right? And then you can actually go into Word and then reference that meeting recording, and it will automatically create a summary document, like a project proposal. Then you can go into PowerPoint, and it will create a PowerPoint proposal summarizing the
What?
project proposal. And so it's, those kind of tools are transformational. You just have to figure out how
Yep.
you can use those tools.
100%. That's so interesting that you bring this up because that sort of speaks to the transformation. Yeah, we talk about digital transformation, but it's really the transformation of a person's responsibilities and tasks, right? So back in the day, I actually watched. I don't know if you've heard of this movie called Hidden Figures. Have you
Yeah,
seen that movie?
yeah,
Yeah, and so it was
great
like
movie.
about the amazing movie. And so it was about the folks who were primarily women of African American descent, I think, and they were amazing mathematicians. And back in the 60s, 50s or 60s, they were all in a back room and they were manually computing all
Yeah,
of these crazy calculations, like literally astrophysics calculations by hand so that they
yeah.
could send Apollo to the moon. Isn't that?
It's
And
crazy when you think about the fact that a lot of people can barely do basic math in their head, and these people are literally doing astronomical calculations. So how far we come from that point.
right. And even in the movie, they introduced that, I think it was Fortran. Like
Yeah,
Fortran was the thing that they had this mainframe and nobody knew how to work it. And then this group of women kind of figured it out and sort of and so that very transformationally, affected their jobs and what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like not necessarily so perhaps it's not as impact well it's not significant, but these tools that you speak of like the Copilot, they're transforming the way people do jobs, right? And
100%.
that's okay.
We actually saw a demo of a product that's is kind of related to our coding. It's for our data scientists,
Hmm.
where you would take, it was generative AI for Python code, which is the primary language they work in. And you'd be able to say, I want to do this, this, and this, and it would generate the code. And the guy showed an example where he generated the code manually, and then he was able to generate the code from generative AI as well.
And
So
so how did that compare? I'm curious to
it
know.
was basically the same code. And now it was a demo guy, so it could have been that he prepped that. But I think it really comes down to is as we go forward, how do people make informed usage of those tools, right?
Hmm.
For using it as an accelerator, not as a replacement for their own critical thinking. Um,
Right.
and then from a technology perspective, how do we enable the business to, be aware of those tools and test them and try them out and find the use cases for them? And then how do we, learn the skills to effectively utilize those tools? I have a team of developers, And so there's lots of generative tools that are around coding. So how do we actually use those tools to accelerate our coding initiatives? So,
Right.
so lots of, it's crazy what's coming down the pipe.
That's amazing. So question for you, what challenges did you encounter, or did you? I would surmise the answer is yes. There's always got to be some challenges when driving digital transformation within your organization. And it doesn't have to be just this one, just like over the course of your career, what sort of challenges have you encountered?
So consulting, in my consulting career, it's always been a lot easier because inherently as a consultant, you get brought in because of there's a knowledge gap, or there's a critical, timeline that you have to hit, or there's a capacity in the organization, and it's usually for a large initiative that's already approved, right? They're not bringing in consultants that we don't have budget approved. Inside the business world, and being directly in the business world, it's more about how do you spend a lot more time at the beginning making sure that you understand what you're trying to accomplish, how it fits into the organizational strategy, all that fun prepping for when you do an initiative, like a large initiative. So it's kind of that other side of things, and that's always a challenge. It can be less of a challenge depending on the specific project. So some of our projects have been ones where you're trying to example was that website where we were behind our market by a few dozen scenarios. Very easy to document that and make the case and say, here is the case. It's the other things that are kind of stumbling here, but one of the things that I find that's always challenging is understanding the keeping the lights on versus net new initiatives.
Yes.
And making sure that people understand that when you go and you add a product to your mix, and you add a capability to your mix, that there's more operational need, right? Or that you have to maintain what you've built, or you have to, there's times that you're going to be doing just pure updates to, there's an example, we were doing some security penetration testing, and we had to do an update to one of our packages that were on our website. And that took, a fair amount of time to go through, and it's not sexy work, and it's not work that anybody's super excited about, and it takes capacity of the team. And you have to explain that and say, hey, FYI, we can't do this other business project until we finish this critical, thing that will result in literally no change to the way that you do business, but will, help us be more secure. So that balance, finding that balance that people understand.
Yes, and I mean, I feel like security is a pretty easy sell. It's like, do this, and we won't have a data breach, or you won't lose tons of millions of dollars for no reason.
So, or another example is server upgrades, right, or software upgrades, or I was working on a Salesforce project, and they were making a change from legacy Salesforce coding to Salesforce Lightning coding. And the business is saying you're in the midst of a project saying, okay, we got to change our code, and they're going, so what do we get out of this? It's like literally no benefit from you from a frontline perspective, but we have to do it. And because it's the way that the platform's going. And so just having to explain that and say sometimes there's no choice because you've got end of life software, end of life components, end of life services, etc. So the other one that I think is really interesting as well is that as you get more interconnected, helping people understand that what used to be a small tweak may actually have a whole bunch of implications we don't understand, right? And you think about that in terms of reporting systems or APIs that you're setting data and pulling data from, is that you no longer live in isolation. So you're not just doing it in a software package that you fully control. You're working with third parties, and so you have to understand when they make a change, and then you have to update your system, and then you have to understand when you make a change, how is that going to impact downstream systems? How is it going to impact reporting, all that fun stuff, and trying to make sure you have that cohesive whole.
Do you find that you guys get a say in like say release, like third party release managements because you're you are a client of theirs? I mean, to me, I would think that you do get a say.
I find that it depends on the platform. I think for third party products, the data products where you're absorbing data products from them, or you're doing inquiries, and a good example might be TransUnion or Equifax for credit reports, right? We don't have a say in when those systems are down or maintenance. We know when they're coming, and so we can absorb that and figure out. And we can build our integrations to handle those gracefully, but we don't necessarily get a say when they're going to change a data product. So That is inherently the challenge. Like even if you were, we're not a large. I never worked for companies that were very large players in Canada, but even if you're a large player in Canada, for these international companies that are working across Canada and the United States, is that you're inherently not that large. You're the largest player in Canada.
Right. That's, as I would think, turning the tables, if I were a software vendor, I would definitely consider, because the point of my existing is to support my customers' livelihood. So it would occur to me that, I'm not going to dictate. I would consider, what would help you, right?
And I think that's one of what I like to see on some software service packages is that they push out updates in a way that you can then turn them on. So you can do feature flags later and say, I do want to turn that feature on, and so you can refrain from disrupting your entire business. And then and that kind of comes back to you can do these big digital transformations. And it used to be that you do a big software implementation, like an SAP implementation, right? And you'd be on version 7 or whatever. And then you get, potentially over customize it, right? And then you'd be, 10 years down the line, you'd be like, okay, I need to get off this version. And it's going to be a huge implementation project. And so, if you're going to a modern platform, hopefully you're getting into a feature release space, and they have very specific rules that if you follow these rules and stay within certain configuration guidelines, that those updates are not onerous for you. But then it comes down to it's like you have that, if you're getting a quarterly release of a product, right, with new features, you have to really be on top of saying, okay, let's analyze those features, understand if there's a business need to implement them, and slot them into our overall our project lineup.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that, like you'd have to test it out, do proper change management with all of that.
Yeah, that's the other one that's I think is a challenge from digital transformation is that. Especially in regulated industries, is that there's so much new regulation coming down the pipe that you have to be aware of. And, it's all based on best practice, good practice, and it's all stuff you have to make sure you're doing properly. But there's just a formality that you have to be embedding to everything you're doing nowadays, which is great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the discipline to sort of keep on top of that. That's amazing. So the time is flying by. Like I'm really enjoying our conversation. I want to be respectful of your time, and so I would like to ask you one last question, if I can.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. And so, what advice would you give to other leaders who are embarking on a similar digital transformation journey within their organizations?
That's a great question. Truly know, what is the driver for this, right? Like, and then truly do the options analysis of different scenarios, right? So software is not, software and technology is not the end product. Like most companies are not software companies, not there to implement software, not there to build software. And so look at your options and really make sure you understand what the business goal is. And an example being, I've worked at companies where we have made a decision to say, we're going to build software ourselves and there's nothing in the market. And then I've worked at other companies where it's being like, okay, no, that's not right. We're going to, that's not the right solution for us, and we're going to buy something out the market. And so I think really understanding that is that and making sure you have that right perspective is critical as you go forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your insights. We usually have, you are probably the first of a different sort of individual that we have, a guest that we usually have on our podcast, because most of our podcasts are usually consultants who are experts, and you certainly were as well, but you now sit on the other side of the table as the business leader. So it's really refreshing to be able to hear your insights, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, that's great. So thank you.
Absolutely, and I wish you the best for your digital transformation.
Thanks a lot, Kat.